Hey Giants fans, welcome back to Giants Latest. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all things New York Giants, especially as we are in the midst of this head coaching search that is a very large search. So the Giants have requested permission to interview the Chargers defensive coordinator, Jesse Minter. He is a guy who has been very popular this year. So he actually has received interview requests from the Browns, Cardinals, Dolphins, Raiders, Ravens, Titans, and Giants. So he obviously has been busy. I expect him to interview with the Giants at some point this week, and hopefully we'll get some sort of update once that is complete. But the Chargers defense has been pretty good this year, except against the Giants offense. But they have been really good under Jesse Minter. And, obviously the game against the Patriots was tough, but it is what it is. I would say it was mostly the fact that the Chargers offense could not get anything going. So it was less about Jesse Minter and more about the offense, which the Chargers announced that they ended up firing their offensive coordinator today. So we'll see and their offensive line coach. So we'll see what ends up happening with them. But anyway, that's where we're at with that interview. But the big news here is Mike Tomlin, because he stepped down from his position as the Steelers head coach after 19 years. 19 years, this man has never had a losing season. Never. 19 years! That is literal insanity. And, I was talking about this a lot with other Giants fans because I love Mike Tomlin. I would love for him to be the Giants coach. I was saying that if I were Chris Mara, I would be halfway down to Pittsburgh, as soon as this news came out. But the bad news is that he basically is still under contract with the Steelers because he resigned as opposed to getting fired. So, I had said earlier on this season that I think it's more likely that they end up parting ways, collaboratively. That's not the right word, but you know what I mean. I just didn't think that he was going to get fired, especially if he ended up with a winning record like he has every year for the last 19 years. So I was more surprised that he stepped down as opposed to an announcement that we agreed mutually to part ways. We have a lot of respect for each other, like that type of, a consciously uncoupling, like that type of thing. But, Mike Tomlin is out with the Steelers. So now there's another opening. I am sure that Jesse Minter will probably be on the list over there too, after he's interviewing with literally every other open head coaching job. But this whole cycle has been absolutely crazy. I mean, the fact that Harbaugh and Tomlin and Stefanski, you've got 3 out of 4 head coaches in the AFC North gone, which is insane. And what's insane is that Zach Taylor is the one who made it the Bengals head coach. I mean, it's just crazy, but you gotta love the NFL, right? You never know what's gonna happen. We talked about, the playoff games over the weekend, now the head coaching cycle. I mean, it's really just crazy. And I know there was a lot of talk of maybe they're just gonna fire Tomlin because they're ready to move on. But now the speculation is that Tomlin is going to take a year off of coaching, and he's got opportunities to be an analyst or broadcaster and be on TV talking about these different teams. And what I have to say is get Mike Tomlin in the booth. That's who I want to hear from. I think he's going to be amazing at it. And he's got that dry sense of humor. Him over Chris Collinsworth any day and twice on Sunday. Give me Mike Tomlin. That's who I want to hear in the booth. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm excited to see what happens. I would have loved Mike Tomlin to interview for the head coaching job, and I'm disappointed that that's not going to be the case. But, it's getting all sorts of crazy out there. And, I've made a lot of relationship jokes in what is going on with this whole head coaching search. But this is really becoming the Bachelor situation with John Harbaugh. He is, just has a million different women who are throwing themselves at him in the form of different NFL organizations. And he has decided that he's going to take his sweet time in deciding. He is going to let these women wine and dine him. And he is going to only pick out the ones that he is deemed worthy of marriage and who that final rose is going to go to. So what we do know, like we talked about yesterday, is that he has interviewed with the Falcons. And what we do know, like we also talked about yesterday, is that Chris Mara drove down to Baltimore and had a lunch conversation with Jim Harbaugh. Now, supposedly, again, all these rumors are continuing on that Harbaugh is deciding between who his future wife is going to be, and he seems to have narrowed it down between the Titans, Giants, and Falcons. There's still some talk about the Dolphins in there, but the Ravens owner came out and said that Harbaugh's not going to go anywhere where he's uncertain of the quarterback. Like, he doesn't want to get into the whole draft search because, he's not a young buck anymore. And he wants to go somewhere where the quarterback is. Well, Tennessee's got the quarterback in Cam Ward. They have $100 million in cap space. They got warmer weather. Like, everyone was just speculating that was why he was going to go to the Dolphins. The thing about the Falcons, I think the Falcons have a lot of great opportunity for him there, but the quarterback is in question because the reality is Kirk Cousins is not the quarterback of the future. And Michael Penix is coming back from another knee injury, and the Falcons don't have a first-round pick. So I actually think, I've said this before, that I think the Raiders is potentially more exciting than the Falcons because of that, because you're getting Fernando Mendoza, because you have the first overall pick and $100 million in cap space and whatnot. So I wouldn't rule out the Raiders. I just think that they should still be in that mix. And I think that's one of the biggest knocks against the Dolphins too, is that is Quinn Ewers really their future? No disrespect to Quinn Ewers. It's just, I don't really think that he's, a franchise quarterback. So anyway, we'll see. But I want to get into this because we're going to talk more about Chris Mara. But what I don't like is that it feels like there is continually a narrative that is pushed from the Giants that the fan base needs to get on board with Chris Mara. And it's feeling a little too pushy. Stop trying to make Chris Mara fetch. It's not happening, okay? So this is a tweet that came out from Ian O'Connor, who we've talked about a lot in the last couple days. He's got sources in the building, people in the building, and he has been the one who has been rapid fire all about John Harbaugh and the Giants. Okay, this is his tweet. John Mara's brother Chris left New York Giants to run a scouting service and be Arena League GM to prepare to be the Giants GM. This was years and years ago, FYI. Ernie Accorsi, who was the GM at the time, again, this was a while back, retired. And when John didn't give Chris the job, Chris was devastated. Now, the reason he didn't give him the job is because Steve Tisch was like, oh, hell no. That's not what Ian Connor said. Ian Connor said he didn't give Chris the job because Tisch balked, which is, might as well said hell no. It's the same thing. Anyway, the rest of the tweet is this. John hired Jerry Reese. 19 years later, Chris is back in the spotlight because he went and met with, John Harbaugh. So here's the thing. We're going to discuss Chris Mara more at a later date. I understand the nepotism factor, and I think we all need to have a reminder here that we are all human. And if my grandfather, who was a Giants season ticket holder, if he passed the Giants on to me, you don't think I'd be hiring my family members? Now, I have 3 brothers. I would not hire the brother who doesn't know a thing about football and couldn't tell you offense versus defense. I'm not hiring him. He's a contractor. He can get hired to work on the stadium. But, I think it's human nature to be like, I'm going to get my friends and family involved, which, listen, is not always the right decision, okay? I'm not saying it was the right move to bring in Chris Mara. I'm saying it's human nature to bring in family and friends who have experience. Now, Chris Mara went to Boston College. He was a defensive back. He was a great college football player, never played in the NFL, but then he went into scouting. So he has experience. The problem is, since he's been with the Giants, they have not been very good. And he has brought in someone like Tim McDonald, who has not been very good. And he's gotten promotions that maybe he didn't necessarily deserve. Maybe he got them partially because of the family name. Maybe he got them because he's been there for a long time. We'll never know the full details about this, but I don't like the sob story about Chris Mara. You own a franchise and you're taking over for your brother. Let's not with the sob story, okay? He's fine. I'm sure he's very upset that his brother has cancer. He should be. I would be very upset if one of my brothers had cancer. I sympathize with him there, but Stop trying to make us like Chris Mara, okay? And look, it's not that I don't like, I'm sure Chris Mara is a great person and, wants the best for the franchise, but it doesn't mean that he's good at his job, right? John Mara wants the best for the franchise, but he has made some very poor decisions over the last decade that unfortunately have led to a lot of losing and not winning. So speaking of John Mara, we're back with Ian O'Connor. This is a tweet from him. Giants co-owner John Mara was among many New York Giants executives in direct contact Tuesday with John Harbaugh's camp. Despite his cancer fight, Mara has been putting in the work, engaging in all in-person interviews in New Jersey and working the phones on Harbaugh today. He wants this one badly. Now, I want, for John Mara's sake and for the rest of us as fans, I also want it to work because I want to win. And I want to be excited to go to MetLife Stadium instead of dreading it and feeling like, here we go again. I did not go to a game past October 6th this year. That is so sad. It's so depressing. I love this goddamn team. I want to go there and I want to spend my whole Sunday there and I want to be as excited as I was when we beat the Chargers and we beat the Eagles because those were amazing days. And then it just all fell off a cliff. So, I want it to work for the sake of John Mara and for the rest of the fans and for this franchise because I want to win. And I do think that it will uplift John Mara's spirits a lot as he's going through this whole cancer battle. So anyway, it sounds like Chris Mara is going to be the successor to John Mara, and he is going to be the one who leads this franchise. Now, I don't have a problem with that if they do what the Falcons did, and you hire a COO or a CEO who is president of football operations, because Chris Mara is not good at that. And sometimes you got to look in the mirror, You own a franchise, okay? It's okay for you to look in the mirror and be like, maybe I'll let someone who's better at this do it because I want to make more money, which would happen if we were winning. Anyway, here's the last tweet from Ian O'Connor. Eli Manning and Brian Daboll are among the voices who have called John Harbaugh to give him a strong recommendation on Jackson Dart and the Giants. Daboll showing some class here, good for him. Here's the thing. We all know that Brian Daboll is a good guy. I have never questioned whether Daboll was rude to the players and fought with them and hated them and whatever. Like, he was actually the opposite of that. He was too nice for his own good, and unfortunately it led to him getting fired. But anyway, Daboll didn't have to do that, and the fact that he went out of his way to do that, I think, was very kind of him. I think it was very professional of him. I think that, sometimes when you're out of things for a little while, you can look back and say, I'm sure he can look back and say there are things that I wish I did differently, like maybe firing Shane Bowen last January. Maybe Daboll still would have been the coach, maybe he wouldn't have, but I'm sure he has reflected on his time, and, he is interviewing as the head coach for the Titans. So I'm sure he's reflected and is going to think back and talk about the things that he could improve upon if he was to be hired by them to be the next coach. And if he's not, he will be an offensive coordinator again, and I'm certain that he will be very successful. So I think it's great that these guys are getting involved. Like I said, it's The Bachelor. We are all awaiting John Harbaugh to pick his lovely future wife. He is getting wined and dined. He's meeting the family. He's meeting the cousins. He's having, every former boyfriends come in and tell them how much they love them and everything that's good about them and why they should pick them to be the future. So we are just sitting here waiting, twiddling our thumbs to find out if John Harbaugh is going to marry the New York Giants and give us the final rose. So we'll see. Maybe we'll know more tomorrow, but stay tuned.